All right. I'm so excited today to have Riley Harris to share her story with multiple rheumatic diseases and autoimmune conditions. So, welcome, Riley. Can you let the audience know where you live and what is your relationship to arthritis?
So I am in rural Oklahoma. As far as my relationship to arthritis, that's kind of a complex one, as you know. I actually started out with seronegative rheumatoid arthritis. I also have inflammatory arthritis from lupus and Sjogren's disease, osteoarthritis. So I know that one's like off to the side of stuff and some degenerative stuff as well. So yeah, that's most of it at least.
Yeah. And we're also going to talk a little bit about interstitial lung disease and how that relates to RA as well in your case. But I would love to hear a little bit. We all in this podcast, in this community, we bond over our diagnosis stories slash sagas. I would love to hear, how were you diagnosed with seronegative rheumatoid arthritis?
Cool. So that one started, I was in my early 20s, about 8, 9 years ago. The problem was that it was my primary that diagnosed it due to insurance barriers. Basically, there was a 2, 3 year wait list for rheumatology. And he figured out what was going on, and I wasn't really treated for it at all for a couple of years at least. But that was the first time that I had heard of that. My labs tend to not come back textbook or normal for what they look for that kind of thing. So it took a while to even remotely hear the name. And then I believe it was 3 years ago, the rheumatologist office that I'm at now, they reconfirmed everything due to the damage in my hands and my feet and just symptoms and everything else because my lab work still hasn't kicked over. My RA factor has never hit over on the positive.
Yeah. That's such a good, though, example to know that you don't have to have positive blood work, blood markers to have a diagnosis of RA. It's known as a diagnosis of exclusion, which means that they take multiple factors into account: the physical exam, imaging, blood work. And I'll put some resources in the show notes for what it means to be seronegative, because it's a common area of confusion. So what were some of your diagnosis? What were some of your symptoms that led you to go to the primary care in the first place?
It was a lot of pain was a lot of it.
In your
That
hand?
yeah, it was pain in my hands. I've had pain in my spine and my back pretty much throughout this entire thing. I noticed some deformities with my feet, with the ulnar drift, with my feet and my hands, which at the time, through probably the first 5 or 6 years, I was just talking about this to my dermatologist like 2 weeks ago. The shoes I wore for work at the time, I thought that was what was causing my big toe to go this way and have that ulnar drift. So for a long time, I didn't even put two and two together or connect the dots rather that was the damage from the RA. So now that's something that we're having to try to go back to correct now. And it's going to be interesting to say at least because it like nobody ever said anything, even when I would bring it up and be like, hey, my feet really hurt. Like, what's going on with this? And it was just never really addressed. So pain was the biggest symptom. Fatigue. I was sleeping a lot, like 18 hours a day, could not get up in the morning. The morning stiffness is still pretty awful. It's a good couple hours to get up and around. The mornings are the hardest part of my day. So that was really the biggest ones where I was like, hey, we've got an issue. And the problem was that I'm a complex case. So I have a lot of other stuff going on and did then as well past the CRA. And we didn't know. So there was a whole slew of other symptoms that I was in the office for. And unfortunately, my RA just got shoved to the side because it was like, well, what's going on with all of this? And then again, the insurance barriers to the specialist, it took a really long time.
Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioned that. I think there are some people that fall into a category very straightforward. They're otherwise completely healthy, and then they develop rheumatoid arthritis. That was my story, right? And well, actually, it wasn't even mine. Now I realize, because I had gastroparesis too. But there are people who have that just already, like that's their only health issue. And then there's people where it overlaps, like you mentioned, and that can just make it so hard. Because then you're like, well, am I fatigued from Sjogren's or from RA or from lupus or from anything else that I've already been diagnosed with? And we're going to talk later a little bit about like coping skills and how do you cope with all the overwhelm that can come with being a complex patient. but I wanted to also give you a chance to share a little bit of your treatment journey. Like, what are some of the highlights and lowlights? Again, the treatment, the quest to find a treatment that works sometimes is straightforward and you get a home run the first try. Other times it's lots of trial and error.
That one has been a doozy. Being so complex, everything seems to be very treatment resistant, we've figured out over the years. The first one they tried me on was methotrexate. That did not work. Started with the tablets. I was worse on that than I was beforehand, especially with the stomach issues, the fatigue. Then they switched me to the injectable version of methotrexate. That didn't work either. Again, got way worse than what I was prior to even being on it. And unfortunately, at the time, one, they were trying to diagnose a rare condition called dermatomyositis, which is the other reason I needed to get into rheumatology and couldn't. And then around that same period of time of these medication switches, my prior marriage, my husband suddenly passed away. So there was a lot going on. My health kind of got put on the back burner. There was a lot to take care of. It was just a mess for a good couple of years before I really was able to get moved and get situated and get back into like a regular primary care doctor who was different, had no idea, brand new to me. And she tried, but it was a lot by that point. By that point, everything had just tanked all over again. I was going through these weird periods of just really bad flares that we now call rolling flares, basically. And for, I don't know what we can tell, it's been basically like a 3-year rolling flare from this. So now that I got out here, the last 3 years, then they tried me on Safnello, which I've heard good things about. A lot of people have had really good luck with. I didn't seem to have any sort of luck with it at all. So far, the only thing my body really tends to respond to is prednisone. So we have to watch that one. We've had to up it a couple of times, and I think that was part of the problem was they tapered my prednisone while I was on Safnello about 6 months in out of the 8 or 9 that I was on them, and I got way worse because of it. And we still haven't quite gotten through all that. That same year I caught COVID and it was just a whole big mess. So then they ended up taking me off that one because they thought I was having non-epileptic seizures, which I'm not. So I was off treatment for about a year, actually, trying to switch rheumatologists. And then got to the one that I'm at now. I found out that they're not seizures, it's a myoclonic movement disorder from my central nervous system being attacked from the RA, lupus, Sjogren combo. And apparently that's been going on for the better part of 10 years. So, and now we've started Rituxan. We had to bring out the big guns. This is where we're at now. So I do Rituxan infusions. I'm on 1L prednisone and, what is the other one? Sorry, my brain just glitched.
Oh, no.
I was on Immuran too for a little bit. That was the other one before the Rituxan. I was on Immuran for a little while. What is the other one? Oh, Self-Set. I'm on Self-Set. That's the other one. So I'm on a pretty aggressive combination right now. We actually just 2 weeks ago, the Rituxan infusions are twice a year and you do them twice over a 2-week period. So you go one for 6 to 8 hours and then 2 weeks later you go for another 6 to 8 hours, depending on how your body tolerates it. Then you go later for another 2 is generally how they do that for, they've got it classified under my lupus right now because that seems to be the big one that's like leading the pack, or so they think at least. We're starting to wonder if we're a little wrong about that at this point. But yeah, my last appointment 2 weeks ago, not out of desperation, but just like, hey, something's got to give. Like I'm getting worse, which we expected a little bit the first few months after the first Rituxan, you know, and that pissed off stage basically after so long. But my rheumatologist is actually going to try to talk to my insurance to see if I can start going every 4 to 5 months instead of every 6. And I did forget one. I was on Benlysta for like months prior to the Rituxan, the RA-ILD, the interstitial lung disease that I was telling you about. That's actually why I got switched to the treatment plan that I'm on now from the Benlysta. It's widely used for Rituxan and Self-Set. Both are the combination they tend to use for that, for pulmonary fibrosis and interstitial lung disease. And that was actually my pulmonologist's recommendation because of the state of my lungs.
Yeah.
It's treatment's been all over the place. And so far, unfortunately, nothing has really worked. So it's a shot in the dark kind of thing.
Yeah. And I'm sorry that you've had that experience. And I don't think we've actually, in all the over 150 episodes of this podcast, I don't know if interstitial lung disease has come up before. So again, we're going to talk about like, how do you cope with all this and navigate it? But I would love to hear, what symptoms did you have of that? How did it get diagnosed?
So I'm still learning quite a bit about this one. I got linked up with the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. Actually got to do an advocacy thing with them for Hell Day, for oxygen supplement. The oxygen supplement bill that just hit Congress, that was the one that we were advocating for with our representatives. It was a really cool experience. Really good information on the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. They have a ton of resources. I can send you some of the other links from like the articles I was telling you about that I found from the studies. From what I've been able to tell, it's a more rare manifestation of rheumatoid arthritis. If I remember correctly from the study, there's about 10% of us that develop interstitial lung disease, and it's classified as RA-ILD if you have the scarring. You only have pulmonary fibrosis if you have the actual scarring with it, and I do. It's basically considered a rheumatic lung disease or an autoimmune lung disease. So when you go looking at those links on like those foundations and support groups, there will be different ones. And it gets confusing because there's idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is basically no known cause, but it's ILD, I think is the acronym. So it's really, really similar. So you have to really look at which one you're getting. For me, the problem started about 3 years ago. And this was another one of those instances, unfortunately, that I've had a lot of over the last 10 years where I got dropped through the system in the medical department. I was having a really dry cough constantly. I just couldn't get rid of it. Didn't matter what we did. Wheezing a lot. That was a big one, was the wheezing. Really short of breath, especially if I'd be up and moving around or walking, but even just sitting down, it was really hard to catch my breath. That was specifically like I walked in, information in hand, hey, here's this. And they misdiagnosed it as moderate COPD. So it was missed. Yeah. Whereas with this, if they can catch it quick enough, you can't get rid of it. It's a permanent progressive disease. There's no cure, but they can mitigate the symptoms and keep it from getting worse. And it got missed. So fast forward 3 years later, and I finally got into an actual pulmonologist out of that hospital system in a different one about 2 hours away, who luckily has personal experience on top of probably 50, 60 years experience as a pulmonologist with lupus and RA, and knew immediately what was going on. So he got me set up with some inhalers, got me a nebulizer machine. That helped a ton, and kind of walked me through like, hey, this is what you have. And I had never heard of it before. It was such a shock. So it ended up coming down to him, my rheumatologist, and basically the founder of the rheumatology clinic that I go to, who's mostly retired. And he really only comes in on those complex cases when they just don't know what's going on. He came in and with my rheumatologist and basically reconfirmed everything with my lungs. So at that point, they all went, okay, it's not bad yet, but it's at a point where we're concerned. And if it keeps going this way, you're going to be in trouble. The phrase I heard was to save your lungs, which is not a fun thing to hear from 3 different specialists, was that we needed to change the treatment from the to the rituximab sulfate. So that caveat, connect the dots to that one. But yeah, it was very easily misdiagnosed. And it happens a lot, apparently, from what I'm seeing. It's not something that they jump to go, oh, well, this is what it is. And there is testing involved that has to go to that. Normally they would do a lung biopsy, and my pulmonologist was like, that's not a good idea for you because I have so much going on. And that's probably why mine was missed as well, because it was just, like you said, it wasn't just like I walked in healthy with just these breathing symptoms. It was I walked in with all of this mess that has been flaring for so long. And yeah, it was quite the bomb drop, actually. That was the reality check for us of like, oh crap, there's another rare disease that I have now to add to my list. And two, like it really is that severe, because I tend to gaslight myself on that sometimes. So it was a lot.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to put some links in the show notes for the link between rheumatoid arthritis and interstitial lung disease, or RAILD. I found one that said it lists all the diagnoses that you have except for scleroderma. Scleroderma says it's the primary pulmonary manifestation of RA, as it is for other connective tissue diseases like scleroderma, inflammatory myositis, which that includes dermatomyositis, Sjogren's, and then undifferentiated connective tissue disease. So it's just something to really to be aware of as a patient and to know, like, to advocate for yourself. Like you said, that it can even be misdiagnosed, even though it is the most common pulmonary or lung manifestation of RA. And so obviously you have been through a lot. And before we started recording, I always ask the people I'm chatting with on who are sharing their personal stories, what are you most passionate about sharing to the audience? Or what stories do you want to make sure are represented? And I already know you a little bit, by the way. I know you through the support group, but I really loved that you had these two things you wanted to share about. I don't want to steal your thunder, but the first one is that how you have been found peace in small moments, like especially when flaring. And I would just love to learn what does finding peace in those little moments look like for you?
That was kind of a twofold. I really had to think about like how I wanted to word this because like it's kind of a new concept that I've been having to use being housebound the last year. For me, it probably looks a little bit different than the average person of like what living in the present moment looks like, I guess, because of the situation itself. And especially since starting the recovery, I've been bedbound mostly throughout the days, at least half the days for about the last 2 months. So it probably looks a little bit different. It really comes down to one, just really focusing on what I'm doing at the time instead of the spider web my brain tends to do throughout the day of like, okay, well, can I get this done? What is going on with this? Is this a new symptom? Like my brain with on top of everything else tends to go naive and up in constantly. It just never shuts down. So I really have to work at it to focus on what I'm doing, whether that's feeding my dogs or doing something for myself or if I'm painting. It really comes down to just like stopping and taking that breath and going, okay, I'm here. This is how it is. I got this. And it I may not sound like the typical definition, but like that really does help when you're confined to the same four walls all the time. Like there are days at a time that I don't leave our house, and it messes with you after a while, especially if you're not feeling well. So there's that. And then the second part to that for me is the twofold of that, I guess you could say, is when I'm flaring that badly, being able to stop and go, okay, this is how it is. It sucks, but it's okay. And really coming to terms with the fact that sometimes you just can't do anything about it. I've had some bad pain flares where nothing in my toolbox has worked. My medications haven't touched it. Nothing. I mean, you know how that goes. You go down the list of like the heating pad, the lidocaine, the other topicals, the braces, the meds, the naps. Like you go through the whole thing in your toolbox and like nothing even makes a dent in it. And really at the end of the day, there's not much else you can do. You can either sit and be upset and stressed, which is just going to make all of that worse, or you can stop, take that breath and go, this is just how it is. And it sucks. And it's okay that it sucks. All I can do is what I've done, take the nap and go from there. And that's been a really tough one for me to wrap my brain on around. I've gotten better about it, but that really keeps my sanity when it gets that bad, especially because my husband works a lot, so I'm home alone, just me and the dog. And it's very isolating. Like I said, it can really mess with your head, especially when you're in that much pain so often. So it's really crucial for me to be able to have those moments and go, I'm okay. As horrible as this is, it's gonna pass.
And you describe it in such a vivid way. And I think I love the word peace in that moment. And it always reminds me of when my therapist has used like the word surrender sometimes, where it's like the last thing you think would be helpful, right? It's kind of like the acceptance paradox, I always call it, where it's like, well, wouldn't you think at face value that, no, I just need another tool in the toolbox. I just need to try another thing, try another thing. Wouldn't that be more helpful in the moment? And it's like, if one of those tools is going to work, yes. Like if there, but like you said, there are times when you have tried everything. And so instead of using energy, maybe trying one more thing that's maybe not going to work, using like saying, I'm going to be, or to allow this moment, however you say it, take a breath, accept this moment, allow it, tolerate it, it is a more peaceful experience than scrambling. Am I
Oh.
summarizing it correctly? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of fighting it, surrendering to it. Yeah, that was the word I was trying to pull up. So thank you for saying that, because my therapist does the same thing, and it's that surrender. And I have a really hard time with that. I was so independent before I got so sick, and it's not something you just get rid of as a personality trait. So when it gets that bad, I immediately go into like that fight mode of like, what can I do? And it really didn't hit me until my husband said something about a month ago, right after the Rituxan infusion that I had, when it really ramped up and everything was really angry and started having these really bad pain flares. And he stopped and looked at me one night and was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I'm XYZ, and I went down the list of symptoms, and this is what I'm doing. And he interrupted me and goes, "No, baby, what are you doing right now? Is this helpful for you at all?" And I stopped and really thought about it and went, "Oh, oh, wow." Like, the light bulb finally clicked, and I'm like, "You know what? You're right. Like, I've done everything I can do. Like, just go take a nap. It's fine. Just sit. Okay." And from that point, I really had to focus on it, and it is a surrender, because it's not easy, but why make things work on yourself? There's some days that are just like that, and I think that's really hard for a lot of us to really wrap our brains around, because we want to be better so badly, and it's just like, sometimes you just gotta let go and just ride with it. That's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah. It's so hard to undo that almost now like subconscious programming, right? That you should always be fighting it and you need to conquer your illness. And, again, it's like my therapist used to say, you're a good, well, he would still say it, but that's not as often anymore. But, you're a good problem solver, which is great for solvable problems. It's not helpful for unsolvable problems. And then that begs the question, okay, well, how do you differentiate? It's like the serenity prayer. How do you differentiate between the things you need to that give you the strength to accept things, change the things I can change and accept the things that aren't going to change? That's my butchering of it. But and that's to me, I've had to learn to embrace the fact that's an fundamentally unknowable question. It's just a matter of giving our best guess in the moment, right? Because
Right.
if maybe the heating pad works for you 9 times out of 10, you just don't know if you're in that 9 or 1 in the moment.
Yeah, that's exactly. And we tend to get so frustrated when stuff doesn't work. Like that 9 out of 10 times it might, and then that one time it does it. I've been running into that a lot, where like it'll happen, and like my lidocaine, the topicals that I've been using will work. And I've got like a prescription strength one at this point from pain management. Sometimes it works, and then the very next day or 2 days later, I'll use it in the same place and it doesn't. And I'm just like, why is this not working? And it's like I have to really stop myself and go, okay, that's just where we're at today. Like, there's nothing I can do about that. So it's hard, but yeah, that's exactly it.
I mean, it's very antithetical to just logic, right? It's like they say insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It makes you feel insane to do the same thing and get a different result. Like that doesn't make sense fundamentally, other than that there is an inherent, I would say I have had to accept that there's an inherent kind of chaos and randomness to health issues at times. Maybe it's a butterfly flapped its wings 100 miles away, and that's why I'm flaring up. It's just absurd sometimes. You just don't. It's can be more helpful to just accept the unknown. You brought so many things I know that are going to relate to people listening. And I think the other thing that you made a good point before we started recording, that I haven't had a lot of guests on this podcast, or just in general on social media and blogs and stuff. There haven't been a lot of people that I've seen at least talk about navigating being housebound, like you mentioned, or mobility loss. You said you wanted to share a little bit more about the reality of what that is like for you, especially with it's the peripheral neuropathy. Oh my gosh, I can never say that, in your legs plus the RA. And also, it sounds like you have a few kind of life hacks or things that might help others who are in a similar position. So whatever you want to share on that. Sorry, that was like a very long-winded question slash prompt.
Yeah, that's something that like when I really had to think about, like, okay, what can I show, especially being housebound, and that's when that light bulb clicked. Like, you don't see us when we're out of work. Like I was telling you earlier, we tend to hide away, and that unfortunately compounds I could talk right today, that societal judgment of like, oh, well, you were out 3 days ago and you were fine, and now suddenly you can't do this. And I feel like that kind of makes that worse because we're so prone to just hiding away at it. And so I thought, okay, well, let's see if I can show some sort of that, if nothing else. And like I was telling you earlier, too, I almost rescheduled because of the pain flare I was in. And I got halfway through that email and went, what am I doing? I'm literally trying to hide away and do exactly what I'm trying to talk about. Like that, it's so counterproductive. Like this is one of those rare opportunities where like, yeah, you probably can't tell just by looking at me, but like, but I can at least attempt to show kind of like what that's like. So, because it's not talked about. I don't think I read maybe like blog posts from some people over the years, but it's never something that really comes up.
I'm going to add one thing that I totally forgot to say that actually I want to make sure to represent Carrie on the podcast. Carrie Kallenberger, she did talk about that. She's, and so hers is difficult to treat axial spondyloarthritis. So just because I wanted to be like, wait a minute, it's not the very, very first time it's come up in the podcast, but it definitely hasn't come up like often. So sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I'm glad you remembered that. That's awesome. And I'm glad that I'm not the only one talking about it because I feel like even in our support groups and stuff, it's not something that we talk about. Like I can't tell you if I've ever really seen more than just the passerby sentence on a Facebook post in a group, or if I happen to mention it in the graduate support group when in my introduction. Like it's not something that we really ever see come up. And I get that a lot of that is probably the societal norms and the guilt that we feel or the shame or just not having the energy to get out and show that. And I understand that nobody wants to take pictures or have conversations when you're in that much pain and you're that tired and can't keep your eyes open or even throwing up for 3 days and can't get out of bed. Like nobody wants to show that. But I feel like at some point there needs to be some sort of a glimpse into that because there's so often that we're just not believed. I feel like if any one of these providers that we see could look and see us for even a few hours in a day like that, then maybe we wouldn't have so many problems. Like there's just so much to that I feel like could be solved if we got a little bit more of that experience out there to people. And the only time that I'm really seeing it now is like the really severe long COVID or ME patients that are finally coming out of the woodwork, even though they don't have the energy to by any means to try to start talking about this. I can't say the myelinic encephalitis. I can't pronounce it correctly, but it's severe.
Yeah, it's what used to be known as chronic fatigue syndrome. Now it's myalgic encephalomyelitis, I believe is how you pronounce it.
I have chronic fatigue, but I have the less severe version of that from what I was told at least. But it's also tied into all of my other stuff, so it's hard to tell what's what. But that's the only community that I've really seen talking about it. And that's only just one particular email that I get from one of those patients that have a podcast. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to email it too. But they've been going over all the long COVID stuff and the funding cuts and the research, and they stay up to date on like all of that stuff. That's where I get all of my information from, and they're wonderful. But like even they brought up in a previous email I think I got last month that it's the most severe of them that are coming out and using that energy that they don't have and causing themselves to literally be unable to move in bed for 6 months plus, trying to bring attention and awareness to this stuff. Like they're the ones that are stepping up. And that's the only time I'm seeing it talked about right now, which is not much comparatively speaking to the grand scheme of things. So it's important. And I feel like it's something that even in our support groups that we should be talking more of, because I'm sure there's a lot more of us than just me. I guarantee it. It's just nobody wants to admit like this is what's going on. There's nothing wrong with being housebound. Yeah, it sucks, but there's nothing wrong with it. I had to get through that bit. It's hard to accept, but it is what it is.
I really appreciate you talking about that. I definitely agree there should not be any stigma. It's like we're all functioning to the best of our ability, given what our bodies are allowing us to do. And this just came up actually in one of the newbies support groups yesterday, where someone was like, well, I was feeling really guilty this week because I saw that there was a girl with rheumatoid arthritis who ran like the London Marathon. And like, I was like, why can I can't even get to the mailbox and she's running a marathon. And it's like, that's what her body is allowing her to do. It's not like she's trying 100 more times harder than you. Like you have to try just as hard as she does. You're having to try to get to the mailbox. And that is as hard for you as a marathon is for her. Like we're all, that's how I see it. But I think so often people just want to hear the inspirational stories of like, and there are many, I would say statistically, the majority of people, as far as the research I'm aware of, people who have just rheumatoid arthritis, the majority are going into remission on the current medications. Just to put that out there, like that is one of the reasons why those stories are more prevalent, because they are happening. But at the same time, people are like, oh, so we don't want to share like the more severe or more difficult to treat people, because we don't want the people who are newly diagnosed to be scared that that could be their reality, but it could. So you still have an opportunity to thrive and do the best you can with what your body is allowing you to do. So sorry, this is about you getting representation. So let me let you talk more.
You hit it on the head. Well, and it's that inspiration form that we talk about in a support group too. That's the other problem with that is society wants to believe that it's something that can be beat. They don't want to look at us and go, oh, that could happen to me at any point, no matter what I do. Like, oh, I can avoid this, or oh, she has it, but she does this marathon, she lives a normal life. Like, yeah, some of us do, some of us don't, and that's okay. It's valid. It's just as valid trying to get to the mailbox as it is going to that marathon. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's something that, especially when we get this severe, I know I struggled with it a lot of like, just if I get out of bed that day and I get one or two things done, that's okay. That's valid. That's as much as I can do. My best is going to look different every day. And that's going to look vastly different than when I can get out of the house and go run an errand with my husband, or go out and play a game of pool for an hour with him on a date night. Like, it's two vastly different things. I have no control over that. There's that comparison trap. It's so hard not to fall into, especially when you don't have much to do sitting around. That's one of those life hacks. You've got to keep yourself busy, at least mentally, to a certain degree, or you will just go insane, especially with that comparison trap.
Yeah, 100%. And I would love to hear more about keeping your mind busy. Like what is a day in your life like, if you don't mind sharing?
That's pretty simple, if I'm being honest about it. I found one thing that helps is I kind of stick mostly to a routine, but I had to be flexible within said routine. Otherwise, that kicks up that shame guilt spiral that we were talking about. And it's not much, if I'm being honest about it. Like, I pretty much leave the house for medical appointments and testing at this point. The occasional errand for maybe an hour or two where I spend most of it in a truck or in my wheelchair with my husband. But typically in the mornings, I'm having sleep issues. Caveat that we think that because my central nervous system is basically so fried out from all the inflammation, and then it has now picked up my insomnia issues to the max. So I'm only sleeping like 2 or 3 hours a night, 4 to 5 on a good night, which is rare. My average is 3 right now. So I'm up and around at 7:30, 6:30 when my husband goes to work. So generally speaking, he'll leave, and then I'll get up, get moving around a little bit, take my medications, grab my caffeine, and I'm right back in bed. Like, I'm not even going to lie about it.
Are you, when you said you're getting up, this is the occupational therapist in me, but even drilling into the details, are you using mobility aids to get around the house like a walker, or are you able to walk short periods?
I can walk short periods. The caveat to that is we live in an RV, so I can do what I call the furniture walk.
Yeah.
We can't get a mobility aid into the bedroom because there's about the width of knee space between the bed and the wall all the way around, and sometimes it's slightly, like, I have to turn a little bit just at an angle to get around the frame. And then there's maybe a slight 1.5 foot between the bed and the bathroom door. And then right here is my stove and my kitchen table. So I do what I call the furniture walk, because this walker right here is one of those ones that has just the wheel in the back, and then the where you like put, it's made for when you're actually like walking, where you can lift it up and like push off of it.
Right.
I use them more as a chair, because it's not the type that I need right now. I didn't even know they made these until recently, because I used to have a rollator a while back, was seated ones. We're trying to get another one of those in the house. That way I can stay off my legs as much as possible right now. But they make little triangle rollators that are basically in the shape of a triangle, and it's just small enough to where we can get it down the hallway to the bed. So I could use that. The problem is they're about twice the price of a normal rollator. So they're like 130 to 180 versus now they've gone up. They used to be like 50 to 60. Now they're like 70 to 90 for just a basic seated rollator, which would work out here in this limited space, but it's going to hit this area right here before the bathroom and get stuck. So I basically furniture walk first thing in the morning. If it's too terribly bad, my husband will help me get up and stabilize me that couple of steps to get into the bathroom and get to whatever I need to, because we have the other life hack that I'll talk about. We have stuff set up in every room of the house, and there's a lot of duplicates of things, so I don't have to try to manage and carry stuff. So sometimes if it's too bad, after he's awake, he'll help me. But most of the time I can just roll because I can't sit straight up in bed with my spine issues. I'll roll off the bed and kind of grab the wall because it's right here. So I can just do that a little bit. It looks a little funny, but it works.
That's like really interesting, I would say, pro of an RV. Like normally in OT, we would think, oh, an RV wouldn't be like at face value. I would think that would be a more challenging environment. But in terms of things being close together, actually, it's a bonus.
It's a lifesaver. I actually told him and my rheumatologist that I've never been so grateful to not be in a bigger house or an apartment, because one, the financial burden of making it accessible for me right now would be astronomical. Like it would be impossible for us to do. I am a moderate fall risk because of the peripheral neuropathy now, which we just found out like a month ago. So because of that, like I have never been so grateful to be in an RV because of that small space. Like some stuff is harder, yeah, I'll admit that. But as far as being able to still get around by myself, as difficult as it still is, yeah, stuff is really close. So I can just, and if I do happen to fall in the bedroom, which I've done multiple times, I'm basically falling on the bed. Like the space is too small. That unless I'm at just the right angle, I'm not going to fall on the floor in between the wall and the bed. I'm going to hit the bed, and that makes things a little easier too. And I can literally stand and do this at any given point and grab onto stuff if I need to. So that helps a ton, especially being a fall risk. So that's how I get around for in the morning.
Yeah, no, that paints a really vivid picture. And I just want to, I usually pride myself on remembering to always define all the terms. But as an OT, sometimes I forget, or as an occupational therapist, sometimes I forget. And so I don't think we defined peripheral neuropathy. So the peripheral is like further down your body from your core. So in your case, it's lower body peripheral, so like closer to your toes or lower than your hips. And then neuropathy is you can't feel stuff, right?
The way it was explained to me is it's nerve damage from my central nervous system being attacked from my immune system. It's all that inflammation from the RA and the lupus and all of that. They can't really tell me exactly which one has done it because all of mine are so interlocked together, being systemic diseases. But because it went untreated for so long, which it's progressive as well, and there's no cure for it, they didn't catch it for 3 years. That was the other thing that got missed. It just started up randomly one night, and for me, it's in between my knee and my ankle. Most of the time, it started in my left leg, and I get the burning feeling on the inside, really sharp pains. I just started getting the electric shocks, which are probably the worst part about it. But it just spread to both legs now, and it's mostly just the front end of like that shin area of the front end of my lower leg. And then when we did that balance test and found out that I'm a moderate fall risk, I found out that it's actually been affecting my heels and my feet for a long time, and I didn't know. They've been numb for probably a good year and a half, 2 years, but I had no idea because they don't tingle the way that the other areas do. I just thought I had calluses on my heels and had just adjusted to walking differently because of the deformity from the RA in my feet. I never put 2 and 2 together until she went to do those tests, and I literally couldn't feel where she was poking me on the heel of my foot. And I stopped and I looked down and I'm like, oh wow, like that, I can't feel that. Like that's a problem.
I have a very, very, very mild amount on my feet too, but I was noticeable for me as an OT to the point where, because I've been on biologics for 22 years, I brought it up to my doctor and I said, should we rule out like MS or something? Because sometimes people can get secondary MS to being on biologics long term, or just rule out something else that could be causing it. Well, I'd also been in a car accident in 2016. So then when you add more things like you've experienced, it can be really challenging. But turns out, because I was noticing it was actually bothering me, because I was like, I have this thing of, it was my fingers and toes. And I have lotion in my car on the driver's side, like door. And I would pump it and I'd think it didn't come out because I didn't feel it. And I looked down and be like, oh, the lotion came. As I pumped it like 2 or 3 times, I'd be like, oh, I have a bunch of lotion on there. And I didn't know at that time that, 4 to 5 people per 10. So 40 to 50% do people with just RA, now you have multiple things with lupus too. Lupus can also cause it. People can develop some form of peripheral neuropathy. It's usually for RA in like the wrist, like carpal tunnel type stuff. But sorry, not to go on a little tangent, or not tangent, but like I just wanted to make to say for the audience that it can happen, especially when the disease is not perfectly well controlled. Again, if you get immediately on a good med that works for you when you go in remission, you're not going to be as likely for this to develop.
It's very important. And the problem we're running into for me is that I'm allergic to all of the medications for nerve pain that they would give you. So stuff like amitriptyline, all of those, anything that's an SSRI, I cannot take it. I cannot take it. And I'm already on gabapentin, but it doesn't do anything for that. It just doesn't, I got lucky enough. It doesn't seem to affect it really at all. I'm on that for other reasons. And they can't really adjust the dose because of how much it zombifies me out past a certain dosage, on top of the really high powered payments that I'm on top of all of the other medications I'm on. We figured it out. I'm on 21 medications a month, and there's only about 4 to 6 of those roughly that I can interchangeably not have to pick up every month, like my EpiPen that I just got put on, which that was something I forgot about with the RA-ILD. I have the extra component of it being, how did you say it? Asthma without being asthma, basically. It's like an asthmatic component is what I have to it, to a point where he put me on an EpiPen to carry with me constantly because he was worried that I would just run into something random that we weren't aware of and basically have an asthma attack that's not an asthma attack.
Oh my
So
gosh,
there's things like my
you've been
and
new fear unlocked. Jeez, I'm so sorry. You're going through this.
it's been a lot. It's been a lot. So, well, there's like that, like the steroid cream that I use for the rash that I've had for the last year that has to be biopsied, which we're pretty sure is one of the lupus rashes. But even my rheumatologist was like, it's starting to scar. We need to figure this out. So there's a couple of those meds that I can like interchangeably not have to get every month, but like it's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with. So
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot to keep track of. And yeah, I definitely there nerve damage is a different feeling than, like, to me, the flaring of rheumatoid arthritis to me feels very much like that internal fluid within the joint is hot and it's squeezing outward. Like I feel like there's like someone's I feel like it's like a handshake from the inside out, right? But that's not it might feel a tiny bit like a burn in the sense of it's warm, but it's not a nervy burn to me. It's not like that searing, tingling. So, first of all, it's just hard to describe your pain, but I think that can help people understand. Like, if you're like, wait, how do I know if I'm having peripheral neuropathy? Because it also would be slightly in different places sometimes than within the joint outwards versus out from the nerve pathways. Anyway, that's a whole other thing.
totally right about that. And you were actually the first person that I've heard explain that expanding in the joint pain, the lower joint of my lower back. The problem that I'm having with that is it feels like that joint is just slowly expanding out constantly for hours, days at a time with no break. Like that, I've never heard anybody else explain that kind of a pain before. So I'm really glad that you brought that up because I don't feel so crazy now.
Oh,
About the peripheral neuropathy too. It's a searing, like somebody has doused my nerve endings and my veins and my gasoline and then hit it with a blowtorch is what it feels like. I know that sounds extreme, but when it's bad, it is bad. And the electric shocks, I have literally fallen 3 or 4 times because of it. Because it's like somebody taking like those cow paddles, can't say the word right. The
cattle
prongs, the
prods?
electric prongs they use sometimes for cattle.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Prods.
you. It's like getting hit in the rod. Thank you. That was what I was looking for. It's like getting hit in the leg with that from the inside. So it can get really, really bad. And that's like the mine started up randomly one night, just out of nowhere in one spot in my leg. Nothing worked. And it didn't calm down for about a month and a half. I actually went to the ER twice for what we thought was blood clots because my leg was swelling and we weren't sure. And it entirely got missed, all due to insurance barriers and providers dropping the ball on referrals and that kind of thing. And it was a mess. And what's crazy is like I have mild damage according to my test in that one leg. And I remember telling my neurologist, if this is what mild feels like, I don't want to know what severe feels like because this is debilitating. I can't stand up for more than 10 minutes at a time and walk around without it flaring up. So I had to be very, very careful that throughout my day bit, I do a lot of up and down, and the only treatment that I have available is lidocaine. Basically, I was getting lidocaine patches through pain management for about 2 years for other reasons, for my spine and my arthritis and stuff. And with the insurance switches, there's now a barrier to that where they won't pay for them, and they're $500-600 a box for 30 of them. So now we're at a point where we're still having to pay out of pocket for a compound lidocaine that does help, but insurance won't pay for it. And for 60 grams, it was $60. The container's about like this, and it's only filled up to about here. So like it's only so much that you can get, and that's a good deal with where we're at with the pharmacies that I use. They're locally owned, and they're wonderful people. So they work with a lot of their patients and customers and stuff. But it's expensive because I don't have any other. I can't take any of the medications. So between that and the RA and my knees getting so bad, my right one in particular, my mobility went from, okay, I can still walk around and get stuff done and help out on the farm and stuff and do what I need to do, to I can't stand to walk for more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time. It's just how it is. So hence the furniture walking, because then I can do like the hop around thing. And the problem I'm running into is it's more neuropathy in my left leg and my RA in my right knee. So I do a lot of this bit, and my hips are already messed up. So it's compounding all of these other issues that I have, trying to navigate around that. And that's where the loss of mobility is coming into play. So I have a lot of little life hacks to getting around and stuff with my hands, because my hands are my other biggest problem besides my spine.
Yeah. I mean, you're just forced to be really creative. So like when we were first asking about like the day in the life, you were saying sleep is really disrupted, which I'm so sorry to hear, because normally sleep is like that relief you can get from pain. So, and what is it like throughout the day, a mix between like activity and rest, like taking care of the dogs or getting yourself some food or socially connecting on social media and stuff like that? Like, is there anything we're missing in the day of the life?
Yeah, that's basically the routine. Is I'll get up when he goes to work, and he goes ahead and takes the dogs outside first thing in the morning, because it's just not safe for me to get down the 3 steps that we have going out to the RV and then the 3 steps to the ground. He actually just put mats like what you see in the kitchen restaurants, those grates or whatever. We have 2 of those down at the front, in front of the front door, basically, for grip purposes. So we have that, and then I'll get up, do whatever I need to out of the bathroom and stuff, and go back to bed and kind of sit with the dogs after he leaves and wait for my medications to kick in. I figured out, because of the sleep issue, I tend to take 1 or 2 naps before I get out of bed, basically, at least the one. And I basically just sit until I start feeling drowsy, and then I'll go ahead, lay back, take a nap, get up, and then just give myself some time to wake up and unlock. At that point, I'll probably grab whatever caffeine I had started. I usually use just enough the first thing in the morning to avoid the migraines, because that actually helps with my migraines quite a bit. And I tend to wake up with them quite often. So after that point, usually after the second one, I'll get up and feed the dogs first. My husband works at a butcher shop, so we have them on a raw diet, which is great for them, but it's a little bit more work on my end. So that's one of the other little life hacks that we do, is he uses like a big empty old butter container that's like this big for their dinner stuff. And then we have the little bitty one that you see from the grocery stores that we cleaned out. And I put what I call their breakfast stuff in that one, because it's easier to pick up. Well, I have the one right here. It's easier to pick this up out of the fridge for me than it is, that.
Yeah.
Cool around. So that's one of those little life hacks that I do, and they're labeled. A lot of Post-it notes over the house. So I'll do that, and then usually after that, I try to eat, and just making my food and eating is enough to, at this point, I'm wiped out, I'm done, I have to sit back down. It's either the pain levels are too high, my fatigue levels are too high, or the neuropathy is too bad at that point, or my knees bothering me so much that I can't stand up without falling. So generally, I'll sit back down after that, and that is usually the other nap of the day, unfortunately. As much as I hate it, I used to hate taking naps. And then after that, usually getting up and around, it's pretty close to when he's usually coming home from work. Sometimes he'll come home and have to wake me up depending on how late I've cracked, because it's not always an immediate thing. So there are some times where he'll come home at 6:30, 7:30 at night, and I'm still asleep from 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It varies day to day. And then he does dinner for the dogs at night, because usually by the time he gets home, I'm still just wiped. It's a lot of up and down throughout the day, like you said. And then we try to sit down and do dinner and try to get a little bit of quality time in and stuff because he does work early morning. So he goes to bed around midnight or 1. Sometimes he stays up. Most of the time he can't. He's wiped out. So yeah. And then I usually stay up for a little bit after he goes to sleep. So probably about 2 or 3. Sometimes it's 5 or 6 in the morning before I'm actually asleep. And then I just start the process all over. And generally, if I have phone calls I need to do or appointments that need to be made or whatever, I'll do that around the same time that I feed myself and the dog. When I get done with that before I go to sit down, because I know once I sit down, I'm done. I'm out. Like that's just all there is to it. If I hit that bed, I am done for the day. So that's how I squeeze that stuff in. Any social media time that I do that I want to do, or advocacy trainings or the support group meetings, that tends to hit around that time for me. So it's easier to work in like those afternoon ones, like I was telling you the other day, because of that. Because usually I'm done for before that. So it's just a matter of being flexible and knowing that, okay, this is generally how my days go. And if I can deviate and do some of the dishes or at least get the dirty laundry together for him to carry over to start that night, little stuff around the house that I can do. And then we've just basically got different stations in every room set up and duplicates of med boxes and crushers and bracers and stuff like that. Anything that I don't need to try to carry around because my hands are so affected. I do have the ulnar grip on both of my hands. It's progressively getting worse. I need to get the silicone spacers for that in my feet. Actually, we just discussed that about 2 weeks ago. So that's the other thing that helps a lot is those little hats throughout the day and stuff. So
I feel like we should do if you ever have if you have the energy or bandwidth at some point, it would be interesting to do, like, this is again the OT and me, but a video of your day in the life in your RV and showing the different things. I just think it would be so instructive for other people, and they would learn from what all the adaptations that you've put into place to help you live the best quality life that you can. And I don't know if you saw this, but this is something I didn't ask you about before. So let me know if this isn't, you don't want to talk about this, but I'm very chronically online. I saw this video the other day that was really interesting. It was like an older woman wearing like very colorful kind of clothing. And it was, I forget what the video was on, but it went extremely viral. There's multiple millions of likes and comments and views. And it was the interviewer asked her, "Are you in pain right now?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm in pain all the time." And it was like, at first I was like, yeah, this is what some people experience. I think so. Like, I'm like, why did this go so wrong? I mean, she did a great job explaining it, but it was also like, oh, right. Cause to most people who don't experience chronic pain, that's like unfathomable, right? That you just be able to sit here and have a conversation with me and be in pain. Because to the average person without pain is like, that you can't do anything else when you're in pain. You have to address it, right? So I'm just curious if you want to describe, like, what does your body feel like right now as we're talking?
ooh, a side note, I think I know the video you're talking about. It's the
Okay.
one where I've got a bit of a migraine going on right now to talk about masking.
Oh, yes.
That bit, I know exactly. I saw that one the other day, matter of fact, and it was a perfect example of that. And I'm glad that you brought that up and brought us that follow-up question, because that's exactly what's going on right now. Like I said earlier, I almost rescheduled because of the pain flare that I'm having. It's a caveat, not a caveat. It's a combination of things generally with me. It's never just one thing, unfortunately. So the biggest one that I'm really dealing with is my spine issues, where that's more of a combination of the inflammatory arthritis, and we think my RA has been affecting it, but up until recently, the scans haven't really shown much besides some degenerative stuff. We're actually looking further into that with a lumbar MRI because of a sclerotic lesion that was found on a scan. So I'm having that looked into too. But right now, my spine feels like somebody has a grip on it and they're twisting it from like here to about here. And it's just a constant slow twist. If you can imagine that ache and that stretch, and in that bottom ball joint underneath that, like I was saying earlier, it feels like it's just slowly expanding out, just constantly with no reprieve, no break, which can get pretty excruciating at times. That actually keeps me from walking. I tell my husband it's locked up basically because it keeps my hips from moving the way that I should when I walk. So I walk bent over and just like penguin waddle, I guess, is how that
Yes.
goes.
Yeah.
Because that's going on. I've had a lot of stiffness and joint pain in my hands today, particularly in my right one. My left one's still pretty bad, but like trying to open, I can do it now, but this morning I couldn't open my hand all the way. Like this is every bit of energy I've got to do this and just hold on to anything. So there's that. I have a lot of the muscle pain from the Sjogren. So all through my ribs here and that muscle area that's around your spine, it's like somebody's got me in a big hug and it's just compressing slowly, constantly. So I've got that compression in, but that expanding out with the joint in my back right now, which is not fun to deal with. It's pretty debilitating when it gets bad enough. And then there's the joint pain in my feet, my neuropathy in my left leg is pretty bad today. So that's on fire from the inside out. But so is my right knee from the RA. So because it's all swollen up like twice the size of what it should be today. So I could go on too. And that's the sad thing. Like I generally explain it to people that even with my medications, well, prior to taking my pain medications in the morning, with caveat to that, I am on a transdermal pain patch. That's a 7-day patch. So it's a constant hourly release system for 7 days. So I constantly have something in my system for like my long-term constant pain. And then I have a breakthrough pain medication I take every 6 hours for the breakthrough pain because my breakthrough tends to be the worst of it. So like when I get up and it's been 8, 9 hours between that breakthrough pain dose, my daily pain level is about a 7 on the scale. That's what I wake up with. That's what I deal with on a daily basis. Now with my meds, sometimes I can get it down to like a 4, maybe a 3 on a good day if I'm really lucky. But like days like today, I'm at a solid 9 and you wouldn't guess it.
Wow. Yeah.
Like that's where it's at. And I know that's really hard for people hearing this to imagine that because we're sitting and talking like there's nothing wrong. I understand that it does not look that way, but I got dropped through the system so much and had to function as a parent, as a wife, as someone who worked. I was a bartender for a long time, working 6, 7 days a week. I ran on a retroverted hip joint for 6 months bartending and had no idea. I had no idea that's where my pain was coming from. So you get used to just having to function. Like you have to survive. You have to eat. You have to pay your bills. And you get to that point where you have to mask it. When I go into the emergency room from a flare-up of the chronic pericarditis that I have, which is for those listening that don't know what that is, it's inflammation around the lining of your heart, which can be a complication of both. It literally feels like I'm having a heart attack for 3 days straight, nonstop. I'm talking curled up in the fetal position, crying hysterically, can't talk, can't breathe. It gets bad. And sometimes the only thing I can do is go to the emergency room because my medications do not touch it. And they have to check me for heart attacks and all this and this for family history stuff. But it has gotten to a point that when I go in there for that and I tell them, look, I'm at a 10, like this is what this is, that thankfully I go to the same place so they know me and they've seen me enough times to know what I'm talking about. But I've had it for the last 3 years every day to some degree, whether it's just the palpitations or just chest pain or pressure or whatever else. So I'm used to dealing with that. So by the time that I get in there, even my blood pressure and stuff won't always reflect that I'm in that much pain at that time. And I have to really rely on the fact that like I know some of these nurses and hopefully I get one of them and not somebody new who's not going to believe me because I've learned to mask it so well. You wouldn't guess it by just looking at me right now, but that's the reality of it. I can tell you when we hang up, when we get done with this recording, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to probably be out for a couple hours. That's all there is to it. It's every bit of energy that I've got just to get up, get dressed, feed the dog, and do this. And this is actually more than what I normally do in a day. So,
And we've gone, I remember before we started recording, I had said we need to do this in 2 different sessions or 3, break it down. It's totally fine. But I'm so appreciative of the time you're taking. Cause like you said, it's like we talked about earlier with the MECFS, it's like if the problem you want to represent is a problem of a lack of energy, then you don't have energy to represent that problem. It's like a circular. So I really appreciate you using your very limited energy to just share and paint that picture for people. And yeah, it can be so heartbreaking, like those ER situations where it's almost like your coping mechanism becomes used against you, right? Because they're like, well, you can't possibly be at a 9 or a 10 because then you wouldn't be coherent. You're like, but I've practiced really I've had a lot of practice.
Right.
Like my body has learned how to adapt to this to some or your brain has learned to adapt to some degree. But yeah, it's just you're juggling a full bunch of things. And I usually have these some rapid fire questions at the end. I might just do a couple of them if that's okay, just to make sure that we conserve your energy. Do you have what words of wisdom or message would you want to share to somebody who might be newly diagnosed with inflammatory arthritis, whether that's lupus or RA or Sjogren's?
I really struggled with this one because I feel like a lot of what gets said is all of the same things, which is all, don't get me wrong, they're all important things, but it's all the same points that get brought up in this question. And I even go into that because my go-to is speak up, like find one that will listen no matter what, no matter how crazy you look. Don't try to be the perfect patient. Take your record, do your research, do your symptom tracking, but find somebody that'll listen. Don't wait because of the fact that I went over 10 years untreated and undiagnosed. And I can tell you right now that medical gaslighting is why I'm as disabled as I am. I would not be this severe had they just listened to me years ago when all of this first started, or even 5 years in. So that's normally my go-to on that one. But again, I feel like it's always the same stuff that gets brought up.
I mean, that's not one that always for sure gets brought up. I think that advocacy is huge. I mean, if it hadn't been for I've mentioned this before, but if it hadn't been for the family and socioeconomic privilege I had at the time, in the form of my mom and dad hiring like a concierge doctor who also gaslit me initially and said I wasn't sick, I was just anxious. But then I was able to get the diagnosis within like a year of that. I would have been potentially in the same position given the severity of like I unfortunately I'm seropositive, so my blood work was all off the chart and they were able to diagnose it. But prior to that, it's like I was so not the person that wanted to speak up. I'd be like, oh, well, the doctor says I'm not sick, so I guess not at all. Like, I don't want to annoy anyone. I don't want to bother anyone. And anyway, so that I think that, sorry, I think that's really, really important. But if there's anything else you wanted to say for newly diagnosed people, you can also say that.
That's my biggest one is, and that's kind of a two-part thing. Like it's a lot of work and a lot of energy to symptom track and do your research. But I'm telling you right now, that is probably the most important thing that goes hand in hand with speaking up. Had I not, I would not be here today. I've already gone septic once a few years ago from basically the ER doctor telling me you went completely haywire for no reason. You just got unlucky, was what I was told. I was supposed to spend a week in the hospital and spent 4.5 days. And it was severe enough the night that I went in that they didn't show me my lab work until they released me. And I got that close and had no idea. So when I say you have to speak up, that's where that comes from for me, because we shouldn't be on death's door before somebody listens. It shouldn't be that severe. And it's really important. But had I not done all of the tracking and all of the research that I had done to walk into these appointments and still get gaslit the way that I did, it would have been a lot worse for me than what it was. So that's kind of the twofold thing for me. I asked my husband that question last night when I was going over some stuff, and his big thing on that one is he's got knee problems and some other stuff of his own. And his advice on that one was just take it a day at a time, basically.
Yeah.
Don't let yourself go easy on yourself, really, which is, it's good advice. That's 10 seconds at a time is my go-to. As I've told you in the support group before, you know the story about that one. And I still use that every day, all day. If you can't take the next 5 minutes, take it 10 seconds at a time. And that has literally saved my life. I don't know how many times have gotten me through the worst of my pain flares. That would be the only other piece to that I think that I would add. And I know that was one of the other rapid fire questions, like
Yeah.
phrase or whatever, but that's my go-to. He calls it a quarter mile at a time. Mine's 10 seconds at a time. So it's really, really useful. More useful than I thought it would be.
I love it. No, have had similar experiences where it's just 10 breaths or 5 breaths or 1 breath, 1 minute at a time. I love that. And I think I'll just skip to the last one just for time. Like this is like the $10,000 question of this podcast. Like, but what does it mean to you to live a good life and thrive with rheumatic disease?
This is the one I struggled with the most. I was actually picking his brain trying to vent about this one. I was like, I don't know how to answer this. So for me, I'll fully admit I'm still in survival mode right now, and I have been for a very long time. So for me, thriving with all of this looks vastly different than what you would normally expect to hear or see, I guess, in that context. For me, if I get one or two more things done during the day without just absolutely feeling like crap afterwards from pushing it too hard, that's thriving. If I can sit down and actually be present in the moment while my husband's cooking dinner and we're trading jokes or listening to our playlist and dancing around or whatever else, and I can just bebop on the bed alongside while he's doing that or whatever, or even just 10 minutes of actually playing with my dogs, no phones, no nothing, no thinking about what meds do I need to take or how much pain I'm in or what needs done, and really focus in on playing with them. That's thriving for me right now because I am in survival mode. Every little bit of my day is going to survival stuff. So thriving is very different. I look at it differently in the same sense that I look at trying to go for remission. It's not a destination that I'm trying to get to because I'm full well aware that with my situation being so complex and treatment resistant, that remission may be possible, but it's not very likely. Like that's just not, if I hit it, great, awesome. But that's not the goal at the end of the day for me. So I don't look at thriving as a place to get to. I have to find little moments that I can thrive in now because I don't know when I'm going to be out of this flare enough to differentiate or I guess separate the two, if that makes sense. So thriving today is being able to have this conversation with you the way that I have because I almost rescheduled with where I was at. That's my thing for the day. Like that's thriving because on a normal day I can't do that. So it's not the typical answer, but I really had to like rack my brain on like how do I phrase this in a way that's gonna make sense to people and they can see that like or really understand that you can still thrive in survival mode. It's just a moment by moment by moment thing, and you have to be a lot more intentional with it than what our societal norm of thriving
Yes.
the rheumatic disease or any disease really at all would be. Does that make sense at all?
No, 1,000%. And I think that the phrase that came to mind when you were saying that is like micro moments, like finding those moments, finding the freedom. I remember one of my favorite books is called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who's a Holocaust survivor. And he talked about, he said like between stimulus and response is freedom. And what is he said something like the last of the human freedoms is our ability to choose our attitude in any certain set of circumstances, which I still don't know that that's completely true. Like if we can completely choose our attitude, like I'm going to choose to be like the most positive, optimistic person in the world, but meaning like the stimulus, whatever's out of our control in our life is causing us to be in survival mode, right? In your case. And you have this freedom to respond to survival mode, right? And you can choose to or be conscious about being present in that moment, even for those micro moments. And that would fall under the umbrella of thriving in your circumstance. Same thing of like the amount of exertion required to go to the mailbox for some people is the same as other people going to the marathon. We should celebrate people doing the accomplishments that are relative to the context of their constraints, not just like we only celebrate people with RA who can like run a marathon. It's like you doing this podcast, that's your marathon. That's amazing. So anyway.
Very, very well said. I love that quote too. And I do agree with you. We can't always control to like the fullest degree of the spectrum thing. That's exactly it. It's being able to sit down in that moment and kind of look. And just for example, he plays music on the speaker from my playlist when he's cooking dinner and stuff. And he's a very goofy individual, my husband. So he's always dancing around and joking around or whatever else. And it's being able to take that moment and look down the hallway and watch for a minute and go, you know what? Yeah, there's X, Y, Z going on. Yeah, I feel like this, or this is what's going on, or this test is coming up, or we're worried about this, or this medication is doing this. And being able to stop that chatter and go, you know what? At the end of the day, I have a loving, supportive spouse who's my caretaker, which not all of us have. That alone is a blessing in itself. I would not be here if it were not for him and everything that he does. I have two wonderful dogs that help me with my conditions that I didn't have to train. They did it all on their own. They're incredibly intelligent. And the rescues that we just happened to get, I can't believe I got that lucky with it. And at the end of the day, I'm still breathing. I'm still here and go, my life's not that bad. I might be housebound. I might be bedbound some days, but I have things in my life that some people don't have. I have good things going on despite the chaos of all of that. And that is thriving for me. And being able to recognize that moment is that what's the word I'm looking for?
Thriving?
That, yeah, it's what's the word? I don't brain glitch. Oh,
I always say system processing.
yeah.
But I do.
Error form file lot that. That's the other problem with my central nervous system being involved. I have the brain spinal cord involvement from the lupus Sjogren's and the neural involvement. So my brain fog is so bad. Like my brain will just shut down. I stutter. I use the wrong words. I can't come up with the right words. I thankfully my husband's a very good interpreter, and I can maybe get one or two words out or the wrong one. And he'll go, "This, yeah, that thingy that does the thing that does the other thing that goes a lot of it."
No, I mean, for what it's worth, I feel like this is not to gaslight you, but I would say for what I consider my standards of coherence, you've been very coherent. Maybe my standards are off the line because me having brain fog too, but you make sense to me, which means either we're both completely incoherent or we're both coherent. Well, are the two.
I appreciate that. I've had to focus pretty hard with it, but I'm doing better today with it than I expected because that whole almost reschedule. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get the words out because my pain brain gets so bad that even you can't understand me sometimes. So I was worried about being able to get everything out in a way that would be in a coherent, understandable way for that. So I really appreciate that. So I feel really good right now.
We got this. Well, thank you so much again. This has been incredible, and we went over the time that we had allotted for this, and I really appreciate. There was just so much. I usually highlight things as we're talking that I'm like, oh, this would make a good like quote post or like a good Instagram reel like excerpt, and I'm like, this basically whole podcast. I was doing that like every other minute. So thank you again, and I know you're not. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I usually ask people to share their social media handles, but I know you're not currently on social media. But maybe if you join it later, I can add that to the show notes.
it's in the works. It's in the works. I'm trying to very slowly get into the advocacy and getting to be more online. And because I'm a pretty open book about all of it, it's just been a slow crawl. The problem is that when I first got like everything really like solidly started to get it all diagnosed 3 years ago, I made the grave mistake that my therapist points out in not giving myself that time to grieve. And I just jumped straight in to like trying to share my story. 'Cause I was so angry and so rageful. I didn't want it to happen to other people because I know it does. And I was seeing in the groups that I was in a lot, I wasn't the only 10-year, 15, 20-year person that had almost died because of this kind of stuff. So I just jumped in head first as a way to cope, which worked for a little bit, but I burnt out so quickly. And then I got even worse and more severe, and I couldn't keep up with it. So now it's a very, very slow crawl of like, okay, I'm going to do this 6-week training, and then we're going to go from there. I'm going to do this one event and go from there. And it's
You
just
have
kind
to
of a
baby
build-up thing
steps. Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you
I
never
I
stop
totally
breathing, but I had to get past
yeah.
the majority of it first. So
I think there's no pressure. Just do it when it makes sense for you. So thank you again. And for those listening, don't forget that we do have, if you're just listening on your podcast platform, that I do put videos out on the Arthritis Life YouTube channel or just my website as well. If you want to watch a little video, you can see both of our post-it notes behind us. Click and see yours on the, is that the microwave?
yeah, it doesn't work. Actually, we have one. That was one of that's why so we could do a part two because the life hack things that I have in place with like the duplicates and how we've made the RV more accessible. Our microwave and mini fridge is like right here across from the bathroom door.
Oh, okay.
And it was switched when we moved in here because it was a different mini fridge that went out. Well, there was like an open gap here, and my husband actually came in when we got the newer mini fridge and like redid the stove to raise the microwave up to where like I only have to reach like here instead of reaching way down here where I was falling over to make that easier for me to get into on top of using like lightweight plastic plates and stuff like that. That way I'm not dropping things and hurting myself with it than I was. but this one doesn't work. And we just left it here. So now it's like a bread storage container, and all of
Love
my
it.
notes need that don't go anywhere stay on that with Post-it notes. So
I
no,
love
that
it.
one doesn't change.
I love it. I love it. Well, yeah, we'll definitely have to do a follow-up on that. But I will say goodbye for now, but thank you again so much, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.